Okay, folks are still popping in. I am going to go ahead and give you just a few process specifics as we still have some folks joining us. We will only have our presenters and training staff on audio and video today. So if you can please remember to mute your microphones and cameras. For any technical difficulties, we have a number of folks joining us on this call, and in the event that broadband isn't on our side, Angela Bray is going to be doing some troubleshooting. I want to wave your hand to it, everyone. Angela, you're at the top, JSA trainer. And if you want to send a private chat to Angela, she'll try to work with you to reconnect or help you with sound issues or anything of that matter. And if we have any other problems beyond that, we're going to PDSA for next time and do it again and do it better. We are going to use our chat window today for more than just asking Angela for assistance or saying hi to all of our friends that are on board. We're going to be using it for typing our questions in for our panel that's meeting later today. So right after this meeting, following immediately, we'll be presenting our teacher presenters, our practitioners, and folks that will be answering questions about the presentations that you'll see. And if you'll type your questions into the chat window, you can do that anytime during the meeting. And we have staff that'll be sorting those and then redirecting them to the appropriate people when we get to the panel discussion. Okay, I still see folks joining us, but I am going to go ahead and move at this time to introducing our JSA team. I'm Gina Hare. I think I've spoken to or emailed with everybody on this meeting today. I've been with JSA for 19 years. I'm the Director of Operations, and I think that everyone knows also Marie Shipley. Marie is on the call today, and she is our Vice President. Marie has probably talked to or done email business with everyone as well. We're very pleased to have several of our trainers on the call today, three that are going to be helping to moderate and lead the meeting. Terry Isles. Terry, want to wave to folks? Terry is in the center of your screen. She is a senior JSA consultant and trainer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Terry's been with us for 10 years and has been doing quite a bit actually in the area of virtual connecting with schools and districts as we kicked off a little bit over the summer, and also as we're starting up, because we have various schools starting up at various times, and so some are just getting started, and Terry is doing some of that work with them, both face-to-face as well as virtually. I mentioned Angela a few minutes ago, and she did wave to you. She's our tech support today. Angela Bray has formerly been with Southeast South Central Educational Consortium in Kentucky. She recently retired over the summer and is now full-time with us as a JSA team trainer, and has been with JSA as an adjunct prior to that since 2016. Also helping with the meeting today is Dina Cole-Welch. Dina Cole is also with Southeast South Central Educational Consortium in Kentucky. We have a lot of Kentucky folks joining us today and are very happy about that because they're doing lots of things out in the state of Kentucky. And Dina is adjuncting for us at JSA and has also been with us since 2016. And I'll just have Marlene wave to you because Marlene is actually observing the meeting today to support some of her district folks that are online. But that kind of makes up our JSA team. I think we still have some folks joining us, but that's okay. We're going to keep moving. Our meeting purpose today, as we sent out in the invitation, is to really share some strategies for how do you make the transition for CCI from face-to-face environments to the virtual or the blended classroom. And I know many folks today are juggling that responsibility. some of you are doing both versions, and we're going to give you an opportunity to hear some really great strategies from folks that are doing it and to network with some other folks. That's why we'd like for you to add your title and your district contact to your name, so folks have an opportunity to see who's doing this, particularly who is using the JSA CCI strategies in the classroom, and who is trying to make the leap from face-to-face to applying this and implementing it in the virtual setting. And so networking is a big part of this today. I am going to just quickly share with you some of our presenter teachers today, and I'll be introducing them in just a second, as soon as we just quickly go through our agenda and let you know that this is just a brief overview, and then we're going to give our full meeting time to two of our teams, one from Jessamine County. We have 4 teachers, 3 at the elementary level and 1 at the middle school level, who will be sharing their strategies with you. We also have a team from Estill County in Kentucky, and 2 elementary teachers who will be sharing their screens with you today. JSA is going to take a few minutes at the end of the day today to try to wrap things up, and then we're going to move directly into our panel discussion from 12 to 12:30, and we hope that everyone can stay. Again, a reminder to type your questions into the chat window for the panel discussion later today. Okay, I'd like to introduce to you our Jessamine County team. We have with us Katie Adams. Katie, want to wave to everyone? There she is. Katie is the Curriculum Resource Administrator at Wilmore Elementary. Katie has been doing this for a while with us, has been to several of our trainings, and I also have contact information for the teacher presenters today, so this might be a good screen shot to take a camera of, because they've all been agreeable to share information with you after the fact. Katie also is the coordinator for CCI in her district. Terry worked with their district this summer and did CCI Train the Trainer certification, and all of the teachers from their district are now CCI certified. We also have Ashley Smith. Ashley, I know you're here. There she is. Okay. Ashley is a math coach, an instructional interventionist, also at Wilmore Elementary. And then from the elementary level, in addition to Katie and Ashley, is Jordan. And Jordan, I hope I say this right. Is it Siolik? Jordan is from Warner Elementary in Jessamine County. And then our secondary teacher practitioner with us today is Jessica Blair. And Jessica has some awesome artifacts and different tools that she's going to be sharing with you today, and we are going to make all of those available to you after the fact. So we'll be sending out links with some of that information. Quickly want to just move to introducing our team from Estill County. We have 2 elementary teachers with us from Estill, also in Kentucky. Both are from West Irvine Elementary, or Urban Elementary. Caitlin Durham. Caitlin is a 3rd grade teacher and has been involved with working in CCI for about a year and is looking at possibly becoming a demonstration teacher. We also have Samantha Cox. I saw Samantha join us earlier. Is a 4th grade teacher from West Irvine, and we're looking forward to hearing from all of them.
Can you hear this?
Okay. Got someone with a microphone on, so just want to remember to mute your microphone. Okay. One of the things that I'm going to be doing with the group today is acting as timer and moderator. I just want to let our presenting teams know that you each have 20 minutes to share. I'm going to give you a heads up on a 5-minute warning. I'm going to do that by putting a virtual background on my camera screen. And as we go to timing, I will put the timer screen up. While time is going, we're going to show you that it's on green and you're good to go. And then when we get to a 5-minute warning, you'll see the yellow screen. And finally, 1 minute means, the red screen means wrap things up. So that's going to be our timing mechanism for today and also for our panel discussion later today. Okay, and with that, I think that I'm going to pass the baton and I'm going to stop sharing. Katie, do you want to start sharing your screen and we'll begin a timer process?
Yes, hello, I'm Katie Adams, and I'm so excited to be here with my team from Jessamine County. It's nice to be in a virtual room with all like-minded people, so we're excited to be here. And we are, just real quick, want to tell you about us. We are a district of 13 schools, so we have 7 elementary, 2 middle, 2 high, a career and tech center, and an alternative school. So when we started this process of CCI a few years ago, we actually started in my elementary school here, Wilmore Elementary, and since then it's spread across the district. So our goal in our district was to really build capacity in each of our buildings because this was part of our district vision, the whole idea of continuous improvement and all the principles underneath that. So with that, as we had more and more teacher leaders in the district learning about this, our goal was to have one expert at each building to really help build capacity. So we worked with Terry Isles this summer, and we were able to train one person to be on our technical support team. And from there, they are leading the work in their building. And so it's been really, really fun to see how they have been able to do that even just in this short couple of months since their training. So we do have one technical support team member at each of our 13 schools now. So today, Ashley Smith is going to share from Wilmore Elementary, and then Jordan and Jessica actually, when they committed to doing this, they were going to join us, and then our district went back to in person. So they are actually teaching today, but they have recorded some things to share with you. So we'll be hearing from them just via their recording. But yeah, so that's who we're going to hear from. So we're going to start with Ashley Smith. As we said, she's an instructional coach and an interventionist, and also a previous primary teacher. So she has a lot of things that she's going to share. And again, our district just transitioned back to in-person. So we did a lot of our work starting virtually, and now we're kind of switching over to in-person. So that's where we are with that. So I'm going to go mute now, and I will let Ashley.
Okay. We are going to go ahead and get started. Let me see if I can get my screen to move. There we go. So when we first started school, we obviously were online teaching. So as a instructional coach and as an interventionist, we decided to make a virtual PDSA board. So this is basically, I made kind of like a basic one for our whole school to use as teachers. And then I also implemented it in my own math interventions as well. So I'm going to go ahead, and all these were like hyperlinked for our students to be able to use, and also made in our Google Classrooms to be available to them. Let's see. So the very first thing that we did, of course, is the learning requirements. So as a math interventionist, I was able to have conversations with my students because it's math intervention. So I only had 4 or 5 students in a meeting at a time. So I didn't have to use, or I did not use Padlet and things like that, but our teachers did. And they were trained on how to do that and be able to implement it to get some interactive feedback from their students of a class of 20 or 20 plus more students. But only having a small handful of kids, it was easy for us to just be able to have conversation through our Google Meets. So we talked about being able to have our learning requirements for the year and our goals that we set for math based on our iReady assessments. And since it's interventions, our goals look a little bit different, and our learning requirements look a little different just because we're not looking at just their grade level. Some of them are 2 or 3 grade levels behind, so they have more individual goals. So our goal, we came up together and talked about all that together, and they all agreed that they all wanted to meet their individual iReady goal. And our learning results, we are just now finishing up our iReady data, so that will be put here, and then we'll revisit that throughout the year. And then these were the guiding questions that we discussed on our Google Hangout about coming up with our core values and our mission statement. And this is, I pretty much, whenever we were talking, having discussions, I did this with all of my grade levels, 1 through 5, and then kind of put it all together. So I didn't have different mission statement for each grade level. They are my mathematicians for our whole school. And so they all came up, we kind of, I guess, kind of molded it together. So you can see where we came up with our mission statement. We came up with that based on our core values. And then we discussed our jobs, and we talked about our jobs as at first about being online and how that was different, and how we had to make sure we were coming to class, and I can't make sure that they're, I can't go to their classroom and actually get them and bring them to my classroom. So a lot of the roles and responsibilities of them and their parents and myself, we talked about a lot together. And I'm going to show you, we're back in person like Katie said now. So we are now, I've taken all this, and I'll show you at the end of our slides how I just was easily able to take this and move it to our big PDSA wall in our classroom. And this is where we put our standard and our success criteria, and we would do this online, and then now that we've moved into person, it's now on my wall, so you'll see that in a few minutes too. So those were, and then these are, I'm just going to click back to the PDSA board. Every time that I go back to the PDSA board, it takes me back to exactly where I want to be. So when I would use this with them, I could all easily click back and forth to whether we were in the plan or the do or a success criteria. And then our high yield strategies we discussed together. And let's see. Oh, sorry, I clicked off too many times. There we go. And these were all the different high yield strategies that we go over. And I obviously have those ideas in my head already, and just kind of manipulate that conversation of what kind of tools are available to us when we're doing virtual, and the type of things that we're able to do to keep them engaged. So all those slides are there. And I would show pictures of different things that they've done in the classroom before with me that they were familiar with. And we talk about how we were going to do it virtually online. And of course, there's a lot of modeling and thinking out loud and those type of things. And then here's for our data questions and our study act and our plus delta, which I've not had to do this yet virtually because now we're back in person before we got to have this. So here is last year's how I set the goals with them individually by grade level based on what their needs so that they need it. And every time that they met a goal, they got to put a sticker on their 5-frame. And then once their 5-frame was filled, they got to get a lollipop. So that was how I did it last year. And then this is this year's what I've done so far. So I've taken for each grade level, I looked in at their iReady data and picked out what standard it was that they were on and what grade level. So you can see that, obviously like our 4th graders, some of them are working on 2nd grade place value type things. And then we did talk about what they wanted me to do as a teacher to help them understand, and the students as well. Like I said, we've not got to the plus delta yet because we're just now getting hitting the floor running in the last week. So at the very bottom though, you'll see where when they meet a goal, they'll write their name on the board. It doesn't have to be the actual class goal because some of them have individual goals on top of that as well. It's not just their class goals. Sometimes it's their individual goals. And so when they write their name on that 3 times, then they get it, instead of doing the lollipops they did last year, they're going to sign their name every time they meet an individual goal, and then they'll get a reward after 3 times. And then this is where we did our classroom mission statement like you'd seen on the digital board. I just took those and I printed off some of the things like our goals and our learning requirements and our high yield strategies. But then I just wrote down all the things we had talked about. And when we came in person on Monday together, my first time in my class, we just talked about, like, is there anything we need to change, basically? Is there, because it looks a little different, obviously, from in person to virtually. And so we changed a couple things. And it was just easy to just like hit the floor running because we already had that done online. This is just their goal setting sheet. So their individual goals. This is one of my students, that these are his goals as a 5th grader. And so whenever he meets these goals, he'll get to color in the stars, and then those stars will be, when he gets 3, every time he does that, that's when he writes his name on the big wall in our classroom. And then he'll get some type of reward, and then this will go home with his with him, and his teacher will see it, and his parents will see it, so they're able to keep track of his progress and what he's doing in the intervention classroom as well. Okay, and this is sharing Jordan. I don't want to say her name wrong. Okay, I'm going to pass this back over to Kate.
So this is the video that Jordan is sharing, and this is a really good example of her she was having the conversation with her students. So you will hear her actually talking to her students, introducing CCI. And we're just going to play the first few minutes so that we can get to the last presenter as well.
Things are going to look a little different this year because I am going to be working with you to help you and I work together to learn the best we can. In order to do this, we're going to be setting a lot of goals throughout the school year, and you and I will be analyzing to see how we are meeting the goals. We're going to be making decisions and seeing what things do we need to change in order to continue to meet our goals. So to begin, we are going to start with our math long-term goal. By the end of the year, 100% of all our 4th grade students will demonstrate mastery of the 4th grade math standards by achieving 1 year's growth on the end of year assessment. If we come back to school, this assessment will be our MAP test. If we continue to do virtual learning at home, this assessment will be our iReady test. So for now, I put on our goal that it's going to be the end of the year assessment so that we have a little flexibility into meeting our goal. As we strive to meet this goal of mastering the math standards, we're going to begin by tackling our first math standard. We're going to be tackling this math standard by using a learning system called PDSA. This is a system that allows us as learners to constantly reflect on our learning. We're going to be looking at strategies to see which strategies actually help us learn the best and which strategies don't work that well for us. We're going to have to be creative as we do this online together to figure out what strategies actually help us learn best online and which ones are better if we stay for the classroom. Then we're also going to be looking at, now that we've created and used these strategies and we have learned throughout the math and reading cycles, what do we need to change and improve on as we begin our next learning cycle? So this is called PDSA. In this system, we have a plan. We're going to be really being honest with each other this year. We're going to be looking at what exactly are we supposed to learn during this learning cycle. We're also going to be looking at how are we going to know whether or not we have mastered the content for this learning cycle. Then we're going to look at the do. What strategies are we going to use during the learning cycle to make sure that we are fully preparing ourselves and learning the content before the assessment? Then we're going to study, and we're going to look at, now that we have learned the content and now that we have taken the assessment, how did we do during this learning cycle? Were our strategies that we used during this learning cycle effective? And then we're going to act, and we're actually going to work together to write a plan on what we're going to do during our next learning cycle to make sure we are truly learning to the best of our ability. So let's dive right into this. Let's begin with the plan. The plan, boys and girls, is what do we need to do during this learning cycle? So if you see this blue math benchmarks document, I have typed out for you all of the math standards that you need to learn in the 4th grade. We have a lot of stuff that we need to learn in math in order to be prepared for 5th grade. But don't worry, we're going to tackle each one of these together. So first, for this week, we're going to begin our first math standard. And that standard is all students can read and write multi-digit whole numbers using base 10 numerals, number names, and expanded form. If you notice on our learning requirement sheet that I sent home in your folder, that is the very first standard listed on our document. So that's the one we're going to be focusing on this week. In order to know if we have truly mastered this standard, we have what's called proficiency. And that is we will be looking at our scores on the assessment to see, have I fully mastered this standard, or do I still need to work on this standard? We will be knowing whether or not we have mastered this standard by looking at the scores on our assessments. At the end of the unit, you will be taking a place value assessment on Google Forms. You will see here that we will have a score of 4. In order to obtain that score, you have to miss 0 questions, 1 or 2 questions. In order to score 3, you will miss 3, 4, or 5 questions. And then you see if you miss more than 5 questions, you will score 2 or a 1. Now, our goal in the 4th grade is for us to score a 3 and a 4, because that means we are getting close to mastering the content. However, in order to truly show that you have mastered this standard and are prepared for 5th grade, we want to show and score a proficiency score of 4. So let's make it your goal, boys and girls, that as we are working on learning how to read and write multi-digit whole numbers, that using our base 10 numerals, our number names, and our expanded form, that we all want to work really hard during this next learning cycle to do whatever we can to score a 4. So that
We're going to stop right there.
Stop right there. A wonderful job explaining this. So it'll be shared with you if you want to watch this any further. But for our time's sake, we're going to move on to the next part of our presentation.
that is our
Maybe. Hold on.
This is Jessica Blair from 7th grade, and she's can't join us, but she's going to share how she used a virtual data notebook to really introduce everything with her students.
Been implementing CLS into my classroom virtually. So the very first thing that I did was made a data notebook, just like we would do in class, but I made it online instead using Google Slides. And so the first slide, they added their name. We reviewed our class goals, and then to kind of personalize it, I added some information about me as an example, and then I had students go in and add their pictures, or some of the kids wrote about what they enjoyed, just to make it a little more personalized. And then to really focus on that first part of CLS, we looked at what we were doing, the big ideas of 7th grade, and then we went into our year-end goal, and I shared with them this goal. It was going to be based on our iReady data results. And then students will go through and they will track the scores that they made. So each student has a copy of this, and they are able to go in and edit their copy of it. And so they'll edit it as they go. We used Padlet to make our mission statements. So I'm going to open up this link. Padlet is a really good way for students to collaborate with each other, being virtually. And so I asked our mission statement questions, and then had students just put their initials in and add just what they thought the answer was. And then together I had them type out the mission statement that I typed on my screen. And then we talked about, after looking at those first 4 parts, what it meant to track our data. And then I went through and made just an outline to have at least 3 formatives before we get to the summative. And I based it on our power standards. So I went ahead and put up what the power standard was. And then I added in our project and reflect questions. Project we'll do before our summative, and then reflect we'll do after our summative. So I went ahead and I put those in for all of the power standards that we'll be focusing on throughout the year. So that's kind of the student version of what PDSA could look like for them. But then what I did once I've actually started getting results, once I started getting the mission statements, is I've gone through and on my slides that I present to them daily, I have added in the mission statements and some music to just remind them at the beginning of class what our mission statements are, and just to continually refer back to those as we go through. And then what I've really liked starting to do is giving them their results back so that they can really see how we're doing as a class and breaking that down into proficiency and mastery, and then talking about that goal being for my regular classes 80% proficiency, and for my accelerated classes 80% mastery, and talked about, you know, reaching that goal. And this has really helped with our virtual learning kids who maybe haven't turned in assignments or are missing assignments. We just talked about like how that also impacts the overall grade. And then to really give some reflection to students who did well, I put in fridge-worthy students just to give some credit to those kids who have reached mastery on that specific target. And then I break down targets with the students, and then we practice working with that target. And the main thing that I've really been sure to do is to give feedback about all of the activities that the students have been completing, and then also giving strengths and improvements to the students to kind of model what that plus and delta will look like eventually. We're not there yet. And so these are just some examples of how I've gone through and kind of started to build that CLS into the classroom, especially that PDSA part, giving feedback to students, and then also with that feedback, giving credit to students who are doing really well. So that's how I've been using CLS in my classroom. Google Slides has definitely been a lifesaver with that. So I hope.
And that concludes our portion. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you so much to the Jessamine team. Awesome ideas, and I hope that you guys got a lot of strategies that you've written down and can bring back to staff and to your team. Just want to mention, we had a question in our chat about recording, and yes, we are recording the session today, and we do hope to share that with folks as soon as we go through and look at editing and any other information that is presented today. Resources will also come out in links to you after the meeting. Okay, so let's move now to our Estill County team, and we're going to do the same process. I'll be acting as the timer, and if they want to share their screen, Caitlin, I think that's going to you.
All right, are you guys able to see the screen? Yes? Okay. All right, so I am from Estill County, and so is my partner presenter today, Sam. I'm in the 3rd grade, and last year was my first year implementing CCI in my classroom, and I absolutely loved it, and my kids loved it. And so we were trying to figure out exactly what it was going to look like, because we are all virtual currently. So what we are going to present to you today are the first 4 parts of CCI. We have not yet moved to the PDSA board with our kids just yet. We are still working on making sure that we have everything down pat with the first 4. So that's what I'm going to show with you today. So in my Google slide deck, I have my Google website and my data notebooks linked for you. When you click the data notebook, it will make you a brand new copy if you want it. And my Google site is where my parents have access to all of the files that I'm sharing with them. So those are just places for you to see those. So I have two ways of doing just about everything except for the data that I share. I like to have one for my kids and one for my parents because I also want my parents to be involved with the CCI and know what's going on in the classroom. So the first way that I share my learning requirements is I post it on my Google site, and every third grade teacher at my school has their own Google site. And so we just have the slide deck kind of embedded in the site so the parents can view each 9 weeks and what are their kids going to be learning during those 9 weeks. So that is what it looks like on the Google site. And that is linked from our dojo that we used to communicate with our parents, and it's been shared from our Facebook page from our school. The second way that I do learning requirements is with my students. So each of my students has their very own virtual data notebook, similar to the one that was shared earlier. And they have their learning requirements listed by each 9 weeks. And this is kind of what it looks like in their on their Google Classroom. They go through and highlight as they are learning each different point. So you can see we've got some highlighted already because those are the ones that we have just finished. And then my learning goals, so I have it listed on the Google site for my parents. So they can see the goal that the students are trying to meet. It's also listed in their data notebook that they have online, so they can see their goal for math and reading. And the very first time I introduced these, I pulled them up and I showed them, and we talked about our goal and we talked about what it means to be proficient. And then our class learning results. So I do not share these assessment results with my parents. I'm not sure how to go about that just yet, but I do share it with my students, and it's in their virtual data notebooks. So we have our little chart that we fill in, and we do this together so they can kind of see, and then they also have access to it at all times. Okay, and then for our mission or expectations, to do that, I use Jamboard, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but it's kind of similar to the other program that she showed earlier, the Padlet. But I do it within my Google Meet, so I taught my kids how to split their screen, which was a very fun experience with third graders. But I taught them how to split their screens, and they pulled up this Jamboard on one side of their screen, and then we had our meeting on the other side. And I kind of asked the questions that go along with making our mission statement, and they got to post their sticky notes and put them on the actual board. And so this is kind of like how I do it in the real classroom. I would have them answer questions, and then we would group things, and we would make an affinity diagram, and then that's how we would get our mission statement or our expectations. So we kind of did it similarly, where we did it virtual on the Jamboard. So they answered the questions and they would put their sticky notes, and then we made an affinity diagram out of it. And then with that, we were able to come up with our mission statement or expectations. And so when that was done, I took it and I put it together and I made it nice and neat for them to read. And then that is also posted in their data notebooks and online for the parents on the Google site. And when we made our expectations, we definitely had to break it down and talk about examples of the virtual classroom, what it would look like, and examples in the non-virtual classroom, because there are a lot of things that are very different when you are online in a Google Meet versus in the classroom. So we definitely had to talk about examples and non-examples for each thing that we came up with. And I'm not going to play this video because I want to give Sam time to talk, but this is a video of me with my actual class. We're going over how to get to the Google site and how to manipulate the Google slide deck within the Google site so they can look at all of their learning requirements for the entire year and that kind of thing. And that's just showing how I went about that with my kids. But I'm not going to play that today. But it is there for you in the slide deck. And so Sam is going to talk about hers too now.
Hey, Caitlin, can you see my screen? Okay. All right. Hello, my name is Samantha Cox, and I am a 4th grade teacher here at West Irvin Intermediate in Estill County. Caitlin and I work closely together with our CCI and virtually aligning our Google Classrooms and our CCI boards. Something that Caitlin, that I want to add on to what she said about our students, something that's a little bit different for me this year with our CCI is my students that are in my classroom, the majority of them have already been through a CCI classroom. So part of them came from Caitlin's room and another 3rd grade classroom that was CCI. And so what's really fun and interesting this year is as I was going through those 4 steps with my students, even though it's virtual and it's different than it would normally be in the regular classroom, they already understood, and I didn't have to do a lot of extra explaining about what we're doing and why we're doing it for our mission statements, the learning requirements, our data, and those types of things because they've already been through the process. So that's been a really cool experience. Now, it has been a little bit different just because we are virtual and it's not like what it would be in the regular classroom. So I give a big shout out to Caitlin because she's done a wonderful job with the students that she had in 3rd grade last year because they are ready to hit the ground running this year and I love it. So I want to go over our learning requirements. I do mine a little bit differently than Caitlin does. In my Google Classroom, I have a topic created for my students for unit, and I have a topic created for math learning requirements. So students have access to those. Weekly, we pull up those learning requirements and we go over what we had already taught the last week. So like, for example, this week on Monday, whenever I pulled up the learning requirements, we had a discussion about, okay, let's go ahead and let's look at our learning requirements. What are some things that we can highlight now? And then we have a discussion of, we kind of do a plus delta, but I haven't called it that yet. But we talk about the things that we like with our lessons and what we would want to do more of, what could we change to make it better for them, especially since it's virtual because of technology issues. So we've been definitely discussing that. I've not called it the plus delta yet because we haven't started with our PDSA cycle with our board. We're going to actually start those when students come back in person on October the 19th. So we're wanting to introduce it in person, and then we're going to filter that into our virtual learning. So, so anyways, it's a topic on my Google Classroom. We go in weekly. I just gave an example of the math learning requirements here, and they're highlighted because that is what we have learned so far. And also notice there are stars and there are bullet points. So the bullets are just some learning requirements that they need to know. The stars are our power standards and what we're really focusing on. But parents also have access to these learning requirements. We sent home paper copies with our paper pencil kids, and we sent home a letter explaining what these were and how to have discussions with your students about what they have previously learned, what they're currently learning, and even how to have discussion about what they're going to be learning in the future. Like I said, we reference these topics quite frequently in our class meetings. We have daily class meetings with our students on Google Meet. And there is a learning requirement for all subjects. I just wanted to show the math ones here. Parents also, we also sent a copy of those through our dojo, and we answer parent questions based off those learning requirements when they message those back. Our class learning goal, those are posted in on my Google Classroom under a topic called Class Learning Goal. And but they're also posted in my physical classroom. And so I want it to be ready for when they come back into the building. So all 4 requirements are already posted in my room, and I keep looking that way because that's where my board is. But so they're already posted in my classroom because I want it to be ready for them when they walk back into the door. So, but they're posted on my Google Classroom. We discuss it frequently in our meetings. And when we discuss our data, we refer back to that goal. We talk about how that is where we're wanting to get to and the importance of that. So this is what it looks like on my Google Classroom. I tried to create a PDSA board for, this is what it would look like in my room. So I was trying to put it up on a screen for them so they could see it. But we discuss our unit class goal and how 100% of us will meet or exceed that proficiency of 85% or higher for our class assessments. And that would be the same for math. And then I'm going to discuss the class mission statement in a minute. Now, our class learning results, I have a slide deck that I share with students as we go over our assessments. So we have what we call bi-weekly 4th grade assessment. So every 2 weeks, they take an assessment over the standards that we've covered in those 2 weeks. Once I have the data, which it's behind a little bit just because it takes us a little while to get our paper pencil copies graded, because when they come in on a Friday, they have to sit for 5 days. And then once I get those, I can grade those and then add that into the class data. So whenever you see, I only have 1 learning tech on here, and that is because of the paper pencil copies. I'm waiting on that data so I can show that as well on our graph. But when I get that data and I put it on our graph, we discuss it as a class. We go over those data questions during a Google Meet, and we always reference back to our goal. So students, by that, when we discuss in that Google Meet, by that point, they already know what their score was on the assessment. So they're able to know where they fall on that graph. It's also posted on my physical board. So like I said, when they walk back in the door, we can easily go from all virtual to a hybrid schedule, and they'll know where everything is. Our class mission statement. So normally what I do is we introduce the mission statement. I usually read several mentor texts about values and expectations, and so we discuss those and what it would look like to be a good student. So we always do like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And then we create anchor charts to do that with, and we also look at those mentor texts. But then I also post questions around my classroom, and students are given a sticky notes. And so they go around and they answer those questions. And so they don't put their name on it because I want it to be anonymous, because I want them to be able to answer freely without thinking I'm going to be upset with them or judge them by their answers. So they just walk around freely and do that normally in the classroom. And then we create an affinity diagram, and we group those common answers, and we discuss how we want our mission statement to be. This year was a lot different because it's virtual. So I created a Google form, and since they had the mission statement before with Ms. Durham and Ms. Friend, last year they already knew what the mission statement was and the expectation for that. So I posted questions on a Google form, and they filled those out. After everyone completed the Google form, starting on week 2, I printed those out and I cut them apart. And so we went over each question. We did like 1 question for each week. And so then we came together during our class meetings, and we discussed our answers, and we discussed what we wanted our mission statement to be. We also discussed examples of what it would look like in the classroom versus what it would look like virtually. But it took us several weeks to create our mission statement. This is an example of that Google form. It said our classroom should be blank every day, and they filled in several different things for this blank. Some of them said organized, some said prepared, some said it should be a we should be learning every day. And some of the funny ones that I absolutely love, they're all about the pandemic right now and COVID-19. And so a lot of them said our classroom should be very clean every day. So they really want to make sure that we all stay safe. And so we discussed all of this. The one question I had to clarify in our class meeting before they took this Google form was, why are we doing this? Because I wanted to make sure they understood why are we doing the PDSA and why are we doing the learning requirements and the mission statement, not why are we completing this Google form. And so here's our mission statement. It's just, in our class, we will work hard to learn new things. We will strive to stay organized in order to be prepared for learning. We will be respectful and kind when we're working with one another. We believe that we will be successful if we follow our mission. And so our students, we refer back to this daily in our class meetings.
Okay, thank you to our Estill team for sharing. And we are very quickly just going to do a very quick wrap up. We did record this. We will be sharing information on both the slide resources from the teachers, the recording once it's been edited and will be available. I'll be sending an email follow up to everyone that's participated today. I do see a few folks on the list that didn't get registered. So if you weren't registered, if you will, please send me your email address so that I can get you what you need. And also, folks asked about the timers. They're just virtual backgrounds. I'll be sharing, I can share those with everyone as well. And I would like to pass the baton to Angela to talk a little bit about what we can do to help from JSA, and Terry to share an example of what's been happening. Angela?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. We just want to say thank you to the group. A phenomenal job by all of you that have shared. It's great. I know we've all been baptized by fire in this virtual learning experience, but you guys have done a phenomenal job, and we just want to say thank you. So here at JSA, we have also had to adjust to new ways of doing work. And just like you, teachers and districts. So because of this COVID-19 pandemic, we now are offering virtual coaching and virtual professional learning. And we know that coaching is critical to achieving fidelity of implementation as we build this classroom learning system that these teachers have just talked about. So here at JSA, we can customize and differentiate both coaching and professional learning to meet your individual needs. And I think that's what's been incredible of what I have seen with my grandkids and what I've seen with teachers that I've been working with and these teachers, that we can really differentiate to meet needs in various ways using technology. And so as presenters and trainers ourselves, we can, through virtual coaching and professional learning, also use this as an opportunity to model engagement with participants, which helps teachers know these are things that I can do to engage students when we are learning virtually. So again, thank you so very much for sharing. And I would like to ask Terry to share an example of how that she's been doing some of these things. I know that at the end in the spring with SCSC, we did many things virtually, virtual coaching and virtual professional learning as well, but we're going to ask Terry to share an example of what she's been doing lately.
Thank you, Angela. It's been really great to be able to go into classrooms in the virtual setting to be able to see it. And so even though when I worked with Jessamine in the summer and we were able to do kind of a hybrid of train the teachers, get their TST team up and running, we did some, face-to-face, socially distanced, and then some which was a hybrid where they then train teachers virtually. We've also done classroom walkthroughs this fall to be able to give teachers feedback and to be able to lead leadership teams have been able to go in to virtual classrooms to watch teachers and to be able to give them feedback, and then actual CCI and TSP training virtually too. So we're working hard, paddling fast, and trying to adapt.
Absolutely. Well, thanks to my colleagues from our JSA staff, thanks to the presenters that shared with us today. We are going to stay on and answer some questions for you. If you didn't get a chance to type them into the chat window and you are going to stay on, you can still do that. I think our presenters are prepared to stay on for another 30 minutes if needed, or up to that amount of time. As I mentioned, I'll be sharing and emailing things out to you in the next week, but I also want to ask you to go to the link in the chat window. There's a link that'll take you to our Plus Delta in our Google Forms. And this is anonymous feedback, but we always know that we want to PDSA a process, and we want to get better at doing this next time. We do hope that we'll be doing it again in the spring, and we'd like to invite anyone from the group that's listening today. If your team would like to be showcased, please send me an email. We'd be delighted to work with you on sharing your best practices. And we don't have an exact date for that yet, but we hope that it will be sometime possibly in around the March month, and you'll be the first to know when we get the date set. So thank you all for joining us. I'm gonna stop screen sharing at this point, and we hope that you'll stay on for question and answer. I think Angela, I'm going to pass the baton to you. I don't know if we've had questions coming through, but I'll let you take that away and tell us where we are.
All right, so we have a few questions, and I suppose as we go through this Q&A time, that if you have an additional question that you've thought of, go ahead and put that in the chat box as well. There was a question that I would like to address to both groups and maybe have each one of them share. So how are you communicating to the parents about your work? I think some things were addressed about parents, but if you want to capture that maybe specifically about ways that you are communicating to parents. Dina, you might want to address that to Estill first for those that can participate.
Remember to unmute your microphone if you're on mute.
So Estill, I believe it was when Samantha was talking that she mentioned that how they were communicating to parents. I'm interested in both teams maybe addressing that, but also with Estill, since you've already touched base with your parents, have you received any feedback from them?
For the learning requirements, or is this for any and all work?
Any and all work, yes.
Okay. So we have, for 4th grade, we have daily class meetings, and a lot of our parents, if they're not able to sit in or sit beside their child, then we send home if they're paper pencil students, then we send home a directions page every day, or they have one for every day for every assignment, and it explicitly describes the assignment and what their child needs to do. We also send home we create slides, so we send home the resources and examples and models for their students, and then they have the assignment. For the learning requirements, when we sent those home, we had parents, or I had parents that had messaged me back, or when I spoke with them on the phone, because we do daily contact, they really liked that. So that way they knew what was coming, so they could prepare themselves for what questions their child might have for those assignments. But those resources are available to them when they get their paper pencil copies, if they have that, if that's what their student decides to do for learning purposes. If they're an online learner, we have those resources available in their Google Classroom, so parents are able to access it that way. But we do have a confidentiality video that we show every time that we get on a Google Class meeting, so parents understand that students are sharing and learning in a private space here, and that they cannot share anything that's been said or spoken. So we do have that that we share with those families.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Terry, would you like to ask that question to the Jessamine group as well?
Katie or Ashley or I know you guys are sharing with parents, but what form are you using, or how's that working for you?
Sure. I think it kind of varies by grade level in school, but I know several grade levels have their website where they are sharing their learning requirements and the mission and their goals. We also, I think Ashley showed an example of how we outline the my job, your job, our job, and your parents' job. That's a really important piece that we all add into our classroom because it really adds a layer of accountability to the parents. So I know once we return to school, that's something that is sent home to the parents. And a lot of times teachers have the parents sign it and send it back. And the students are really, really on board with that. They take it very seriously, like telling their families, this is your job to help me. Also during the virtual time, something that we did in our district that I think was a perfect way to just have discussion with them about a lot of things, but this as well was we had every grade level hosted a family forum one night a week from about 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And it was just per grade level. One teacher hosted that. So they would rotate each week. And it was a time to invite parents on into a Zoom, and they could ask questions about curriculum, or the teacher could share about what they were doing with the mission and the jobs and the goals, and just allow them the opportunity to ask questions and just open that line of communication to them. So that was a really big tool that I think helped us get the understanding there.
Great. Thank you so much. Terry, I think you may have had a question for Jessamine specifically. There was a comment that Jordan gave a terrific explanation for her students of the classroom learning system. So I guess I could just ask you then, Katie, or someone else on your group, is this shared with other teachers in your district? I believe that was the question.
Yes, it is. So the way that we our school, Wilmore, really dug into this first, and then from there it became a district thing through our teacher leaders. So we have a teacher leader network, and the focus of the teacher leader network 2 years ago was using PDSA and PLCs. Last year it was using the classroom learning system. And so we had a small group of teachers at each school that really learned about classroom learning systems and started implementing it. So we're kind of continuing that focus with our teacher leaders this year. And our first September meeting, what the video that Jordan shared was shared with all the teacher leaders to show how this could be done digitally. So I think it's my understanding that I think the teacher leaders were sharing that with their teachers as they see needed. They're kind of in different places. The schools are in different places. I know for us, because we're pretty deep into this, but new to the virtual part. Once we saw that with our teacher leaders, we asked them to share that with their team too, so all the teachers could see what a good job Jordan did. I thought she did an amazing job explaining the clear direction.
And I know that Jessamine in July, they set up a Google folder they've always had a Google folder with examples and pictures for all the staff that they can access, and they have a website actually that they access pictures. But in the summer, we established a Google folder for just the TST team so that they could share questions, concerns, things like that just within that group. So they were very clear about differentiating between making sure that some of those things were not put out for everybody, but that they had that forum for them, for that group.
Did you have any other questions for Jessamine, Terry?
I did not see any.
Okay. Dina, what about Estill?
I didn't see any other ones, but I noted that they spoke quite a bit about data folders for their students, which I thought was a great, because doing it virtually, that would be something more for them to keep up with. Maybe they could elaborate on that, maybe what's going well with that and what's not, for those that may be trying the student data folders.
I was just in another meeting yesterday where this was a topic of discussion about our data, because we were talking about getting good and meaningful data, especially in this time, because when kids are doing it virtually, it's hard to know, are they doing this on their own? Is this true data? And so in third grade, we do a weekly check just to kind of get data for the week. And we had to rename our document from a quiz to a learning check. And that just renaming it to something else has given us more accurate data. And we also talked about having the kids, when they submit a Google form, they have to take a picture of their work that they just did and upload that as well as proof, like, I did this assignment, this is my true data. And that was an idea that was thrown out yesterday as we were talking about it. So that's something that we're going to add to our data collection to make sure we're getting the most accurate data possible.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there are other questions. I don't want to keep folks longer than we have questions for, but I know that if you haven't typed one in, if you think of something after the fact, as I said, I will be doing a follow-up email, and we ask you to please fill out the Plus Delta anonymous form at the Google links that we provided. And you can certainly ask a question and we'll try to get information back to you at that point.
Gina, it looks like there is a question
Okay.
that both districts may want to take a moment to answer. It's a question about using PDSA in an all virtual school.
Okay.
So this participant, she is a virtual teacher at Joplin. The question, so they are in all virtual school. So if anyone has used PDSA as of yet, they may want to address that, whether they've attempted that virtually. I think maybe Jessamine may have been there. I'm not sure if Estill is there yet or not.
We have had some teachers who started using that course. Now we're all in person now, but they did start with the PDSA and they used the Google Slides, the interactive Google Slides that Ashley shared at the start. That was kind of a base template that we shared with all of our teachers. And then we actually had one from secondary too. She's not a member of our TST team, but she made a virtual CLS board and I got my hands on it. And I said, oh, can I share this? So we shared that with everyone too. So we kind of had those, the Google Slides for PDSA that, like Ashley said, with hyperlinks to click to the different parts of that. And if you continue to watch the video of Jordan, we stopped it kind of right after she was explaining the plan, but she did a really good job going into how she was going to do because at that point we really thought that we were going to stay virtual. So she talked to them about how they would be using Plan, Do, Study, Act virtually. But I think, you know, the biggest the tool that worked for us was Google Slides and having the home board of with hyperlinks for the PDSA.
Yes, she did a good job. I watched that last night, the entire video clip. So we appreciate that and you making a connection back to that too.
And
so hopefully that helps with the question.
That is embedded in the slideshow that Jessamine has put together. So
yes.
As I said, I will be sharing the slides. We have recorded the meeting. I'll be posting and sending that link out as well. So that'll give everyone some additional tools and resources for their toolbox. Are there any other questions, Angela, or are we?
I have not seen any other questions in the chat box.
All right, well, folks, thank you so much for being with us today. As I said, we do hope to do this again in the spring. We invite you to please step up and let us showcase what you've done. Networking is what this is all about. Stay well, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the fall.
Please make sure that before you leave, if you can, take time to give us feedback with the Plus Delta link that is in the chat box. We would appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you all.